And it's more about unhooking from that, right? And saying that this is what's happening right now. And what are the small actions that I can make today in this moment to be able to move forward? Because it can be so overwhelming when these things come on.
Welcome back to the You Need a Counselor podcast. This is a show presented by Heart and Solutions Counseling Agency. We release new episodes every Sunday at 5 p.m. Central and encourage you to batch up that laundry, put away the dishes, plan for the week ahead, or do any other task that might seem daunting while you give our show a listen. You might just be encouraged to call your therapist, connect with this week's guest, or seek out those services you've been considering for a while but haven't made the commitment to yet. If you are in the state of Iowa and are in need of mental or behavioral health counseling, give us a call at 1-800-531-4236. Enjoy the show.
Hello, and welcome back to the You Need a Counselor podcast. My name is Dr. Julie Johnson. I'm the president and founder here at Heart and Solutions, Mental Health Counseling and Behavioral Health Counseling here in Iowa.
And I'm Chrissa Hunt. I am our Vice President in charge of the Behavioral Health Department. And this is our podcast, You Need a Counselor. So we are designed for people curious about counseling, but have barriers keeping them from experiencing the benefits of counseling. Our mission is to share stories about counseling, good, bad, and indifferent, and spread the message that everyone can benefit from mental health and behavioral health counseling services.
Our guest today joins us for their 5th episode. It came on the show 3 years ago for the first time, and we've just been getting to have these conversations and these updates ever since. So we're very excited to welcome Mariah Hudler back to the show. Mariah is a financial therapist who does a therapeutic private practice for financial counseling, and then also is a therapeutically informed financial coach. She works with individuals, couples, entrepreneurs, really bringing that mind, body, spirit connection to finances and making that connection more than just a separate financial bucket. We want to make sure that the beliefs and the ideas and the actions that we're taking in our financial life are supporting the rest of our life and being. So welcome, Mariah. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. It's wonderful to see you and Chrissa again.
We are so excited to have you back. Listeners will remember we have talked to you about money beliefs. We had a whole episode about Modern Family and the different money beliefs of different characters. Last time you were on, we talked about sudden wealth syndrome, and we talked about Schitt's Creek, and we talked about all different kinds of shows. And, for me, when I think about those shows and I think about those conversations, it's amazing to me always how often money shows up in our lives, in our relationships, in our choices, and our day-to-day actions and thoughts. Even if we do tend to be one of the people who kind of keeps it compartmentalized, it still kind of seeps out into everything else. So give us a little bit of a refresher on kind of what the service is that you do.
Yeah, so I have a private practice. I'm a licensed clinical social worker that really focuses on finances. So my clients come, they find me typically having self-identified the need for therapeutic support around finances. And it's a range of what people experience. So financial anxiety, stress, conflict. So between partners, that's a typical one. I've seen a lot with, finding themselves in tax debt, and just kind of not knowing how to navigate those things. Emotional spending is a pretty common one. A lot of even though people have good incomes, that not necessarily that makes them feel safe or content, that they still struggle with what that means, losing it, maintaining it, making the wrong decision. Also under earning, recognizing, possibly a cycle of under earning. and a lot about like money trauma. So experiences in childhood, that could be scarcity. And those feelings, like, I always start with all of my clients about their money story. And like, if you don't have a first money memory, what was the feeling that you experienced about money? That tells a lot, because that's like the messages that were being passed on to you, depending on what was happening in the household at that time. So, even though things could be fine, if you were to zoom out as an adult and look back, like, we were okay, but the experience of it was that we were experiencing scarcity, or there was stress, or there's potential job loss. And, I think with today, there's, shifting identities, around jobs, and the shifting, workspace of what the future of working will look like. And I'm starting to see a lot of that as well, as like, people are displaced from their jobs as a result of what's happening, with AI and the kind of changes in the broader sectors. So yeah, I mean, quite a range of things, honestly. And, money is just, it's a symptom. It's a nervous system reaction that really bring people to work on it, to realize that, there's something more going on than, I'm just not good at money. It's usually a lot deeper than that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to talk about like the job loss and the AI thing. I feel like that's like a really common thing right now. So, I mean, and it's still like new and fresh. Are you getting a lot of people that have had that happen? Is it like they're worried about it happening in the future? And what kinds of things do you even work on in counseling with that worry?
Sure. Being in California, so I'm based in California, the tech sector is definitely being impacted with layoffs and just reorganizations. And I mean, even CEOs really just, believing that AI will be taking them forward. So there is a lot of displacement around jobs. And now what does that mean for me? So I, as, validating as I can be around, like, this is a normal experience and there are opportunities, but it's a great time to look at kind of identity around work. And so that's where I talk to my clients about, is like, we've traditionally identified ourselves through a job description, and that's been fairly clear and written for us. But now we're being pushed a little bit to be out of our comfort zones and almost to see ourselves as our own brand, right? So I did this one exercise with a client that, let's go back to your first job. And what did you bring to that first job? Right? And it was like, I mean, if I think of myself, it was at a pizza place. I love the service. I love like working as a team. I love like delivering on time. I love being part of a community, because there was a lot of like sports teams that came in. And it was like, those are a lot of the values that I've carried through every position that I've had, and I've grown in my profession. And it's a great opportunity to kind of roll back and look at, like, maybe we're talking more now about what values, what you'll contribute to a position, and to not be so identified of like, yeah, I have these skills, but where can I take this? Like, who will be showing up at the table? How will I be acting? What will I be contributing? How will I be helping this company move forward? And to really unhook from, that it has to be so skill-based. People are wanting that point of difference now, of like, what will be coming, what will we be bringing on when we bring someone on? So it's a shift, right? So trying to get people to shift a little bit around from this traditional view of work. And alignment, right? So just alignment with values of, if you are making changes of, what that will look like, or how you want to be living, how you want to be behaving, how you want to be showing up.
Yeah, there is so much of identity that goes into the idea of, okay, well, I am a teacher, therefore the value that I'm bringing and what I have to offer and what I have in order to support myself and my family is teacher, teaching. And so there's so much focus on that sometimes that when we do have a job loss, then or a role shift, then it can feel like a loss of identity. And so what I really like is that you're identifying, no, whether you're a teacher or you are selling muffins, what are those transferable skills and values and traits that you're bringing to that role? Because those are really what's at the heart of what makes us valuable as individuals to our coworkers, to our community, to our workspace, and the people that we're serving. So I like that a lot because I mean, speaking of AI, right? We're not robots. We're not skill machines. We're not how many donuts we bake in a day. And so taking the focus off of that and being able to look at, no, as a human, you've got worth and value, and that worth and value can support yourself and your family, no matter what service you're providing. And when you talk about those first money memories and feelings, what kinds of things kind of come up when we talk about job loss or uncertainty of whole industries right now? People are looking at their industries and going, well, is this going to be an industry in 20 years? So what kinds of those first kind of feelings or memories can come up when thinking about those things?
Well, definitely scarcity. Like, am I going to have enough? It does shift us into survival mode. This feeling of like, how am I going to make it? Like I have to look at my life. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to pay all these bills if I don't have a job. And the uncertainty is anxiety, right? So our nervous system is immediately activated. Most of us, who have experienced early money memories of scarcity, we already have some of these skills built into us of like knowing how to make it. For others that maybe, have experienced more security, this could be, a period of paralyzation, right? I'm just not sure what to do. But, for anyone, really, it is trying to step back and calm that nervous system to be able to see things a little bit more clearly, right? If like instead of being reactive to things, to look at it as an opportunity, even though that is very challenging to do, of saying like, okay, this is a time to kind of look at myself. What additional things do I need to do during this period of time? Maybe I have a package that, kind of a send-off package that will be coming. How would I use that? If it's just immediate job loss, like taking a look around and seeing what are the resources available to me. Sometimes they do offer like career counseling or just to meet with someone to support with that. So checking with your organization to make sure you're aware of all the support that's available to you. Counseling is wonderful as well. Clients, if EAP usually runs out, like some of them you can use through the year or at least through the months that you're continuing working there. And, taking a look around at what your wider resources are. Maybe it is kind of connecting with family or looking at things a little bit differently. I think that a lot of us go to this is how it will be forever. And that seems like a safe place to say this is it. And it's more about unhooking from that, right? And saying that this is what's happening right now. And what are the small actions that I can make today in this moment to be able to move forward? Because it can be so overwhelming when these things come on. And equally with finances, it's a perfect time to really, if you have a tendency towards financial avoidance, to just really come closer to your numbers and understand them objectively, and how how you can move things around, and how you can challenge some of the things that are currently that you're spending on, and making sure it aligns with what are the most important things right now, which are housing, transportation, food. And even though it's extremely uncomfortable to either have hard conversations with family members or, your children about, at this period in time, we won't be pursuing maybe extracurricular activities or additional subscriptions or a trip. It's just where we are right now. And we'll be looking, back to those things in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we were talking about like scarcity, it made me think of how you mentioned like psychology of enough. And can you kind of go into like what that is? And I'm assuming just from the title of it, like when you have enough, or like saving money. So can you kind of go into like how that could kind of have to go with like scarcity as well?
Yeah, and yes, because this is an important thing. When we think of enough, typically people will go to a number. I'll have enough when I have this. But it's really the work that we need to do ahead of time around what is enough for us, right? Individually, right? What does my life look like with enough? And then how can I match the numbers that come in to enough? So yeah, it's important to pre-front, the ideals of what is enough for us. And that's so individual for everybody. I know that, I mentioned to you, about we're currently living in New Zealand, and, this is a piece of our enough life, right? We have options. We've created opportunity to do things differently, right? So that's enough. Yes, there was like financial pieces that we paired with that, but ultimately the bottom line was the enough was like, we have flexibility. We don't have to stay doing the same things forever. And we made the finances support that over a period of time. It's like these things aren't built today, just like Rome isn't built today. But yeah, so the psychology of enough is really getting comfortable, creating awareness, exploring and understanding what is enough for each of us. And for families, that's probably something that you sit down and some work that you do together, because each and every one in the family system will have feelings of enough as well.
Yeah, and you had mentioned to us that you have met a goal, a FIRE goal. And for people who don't know what FIRE is, it's financial independence, retire early. And it's this movement that I don't hear that much about anymore, but I know that so many people who started kind of riding that wave have continued to ride that wave. And so when you talk about enough, you had talked specifically about Coast Fire. Now there's like Barista Fire, and there's Fat Fire, and there's all kinds of different ways that people can kind of define for ourselves and say, okay, this is the kind of financial independence that I have. Because when we say financially independent, a lot of times people will think, oh, I have a rich uncle and a trust fund, right? And I never have to worry about money again. I can just buy whatever I want. And so when breaking it down into kind of those different categories of financial independence is so helpful for so many people, because we can say, yeah, I'm at Coast Fire, and correct me, but I think Coast Fire is, I have enough. Like I have what I need. I'm not, when they say Fat Fire, right? That is more like, okay, I don't have to worry about money and I can just buy whatever I want and all of that. But Coast Fire and having that level there really does help us to narrow down and say, no, what are my needs? What do I need? And are those needs being met? So I think that's wonderful. Can you tell us some more about those different ways of financial independence?
Oh, sure. Yes. So first, I think I want to touch on the original FIRE. So that financial independence, retire early. So I mean, I've been following this for probably a little over 10 years. And FIRE itself, I would say, is pretty extreme from a mental health lens. This is extreme frugality, attempt to retire very early. Typically, you do have to have a very high income to be able to accumulate a significant amount of money in a short amount of time. And that money is typically invested, and then you live off the interest related to that. I think what's happened over time and why I've always kind of been interested in it, but stayed away from it, is it just doesn't make sense. It aligns so much more with hustle culture. Let's go, 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 go. Let's do this. Let's not live and experience and be in the moment. It's more about, we're so driven, almost even like a survival thing of like, how much money can we get together in a short amount of time? Like, it's all focused on that. And I think that people become exhausted by that there's burnout related to that. It's just, you have this job and then you have another job. You've got like 3 side hustles going, and we hear a lot about that. I think in our community too, is like, well, what else do you do? What else can you be doing beyond, providing therapy, having several different things. And that it is a recipe for burnout. You could do it for periods of time, but you couldn't do it forever. So understanding why you're doing it and giving yourself a longer road will kind of reduce that potential for burnout. So Coast Fire, I think, suits that perfectly. Coast Fire is, yes, you have a goal of, really, I call it being an optioneer, right? So you are creating a path where you can unhook from, say, a traditional work thing by, gathering money and making it work for you, right? And funneling it through systems or, like retirement vehicles and some bridging vehicles that you can access earlier, and building that up with the intent to be like, okay, if I can get enough together that I can then just sit on for 15 to 20 years until I actually do reach retirement, then all I need to focus on is my current living expenses. So that is kind of the beauty of Coast Fire. So that is the path that, my husband and I decided to take. And it allowed us to continue to live this life of like very much enjoying the things that we most like traveling, having experiences with our child, with our family, living, understanding that we weren't going to lifestyle creep. We weren't going to let those things creep in for us, that we wanted to keep everything within reason. And, I'm an LCSW, but medical social worker, 20 years retired. And then I've been doing, this. I started bridging from my W-2 job into private practice 8 years ago. And, 3 years ago, I was able to retire completely. So I was doing 0.5 at the hospital, which was amazing. Unicorn job, fully benefited. Part-time job. But yeah, I mean, that was part of like, how can we make these things work for us and still cover all of these needs? And then my husband was also a W-2 employee, worked in the utilities district, but he luckily had access to a pension. So, when we came together, I guess 12 years ago, we put this. He said, I'd love to retire when I can retire at 50. I mean, for us, both coming from single mothers, like that was just something very different to what we had experienced in childhood or for our parents. So it was a little bit like, what? And then, we'd started really focusing on money stuff and decided that was going to be the way that we would live, to be able to build up and have that option. Being so scared of taking it, I mean, that was a whole nother thing. And then living in it, I mean, that's a whole, like, the anxiety doesn't go away, right? It's just more of like, you just have to kind of every day practice it a little bit.
And I know you said like you started working towards it 10 years ago and knew that that was something you guys wanted to do. For those listening who are like, oh, I want to do that, like how did you start doing it and how could they start doing it? And I mean, like I was thinking when you're like, it'd be scary, like you said, like, and now you're like doing it and now it's still scary. Like, how can you kind of like get over that and start doing it and working towards that goal?
Yeah, I mean, it's, I think starting off, we became like financially intimate, right? In terms of, really talking about our money stories and how we showed up. I mean, both of us tended towards savings, but, my husband's much more of an anchor. I've like lived in several different countries and like that's how I put things first, right? So he was a little bit more ahead, but coming together, we knew that we had the opportunity between the two of us and our W-2s to save a certain amount of money. So we did, I think at one point, we saved about 25% of our income. So, and how do you do that? Right? I mean, it's like, whoa, 25%. I mean, they're just saying like, okay, a match of 6% and I'll put in this. And yeah, I mean, you do have to be intentional about saying I'm going to save more. I mean, we weren't making, a huge amount of money, but it's really what you do with the money that you make is the most important thing. So, we did that, and then we just kind of created life around that. We just became very financially strategic about the things we bought, how we bought them, how we purchased them, what we would buy new versus what we would take on used or pass around in the community. We used buy nothing a lot for things that just weren't that as important. And I think I've talked about this on a previous, but we have our monthly check-ins where we update our net worth. And, it was like this transparency, this trust. It really helped with financial anxiety around the changes in the market because, we have a house in California, but primarily a lot of our investments are through the market. So it gave us a money history to kind of over the years see how the markets fluctuated. And neither of us were like, we were long-termers, right? We weren't planning for short term. So we were just a set it and forget it with investments in like, the index funds. And, we never veered from that, even when things got difficult during COVID. And sometimes for 3 months, I don't think we looked at it because it was just sad. So, but we picked it back up. And honestly, it's such a history. It's a lovely document of over 10 years of where we would come together and make sure that we were on track. We started to believe it more, right? Again, we don't know a lot of people that have done this. We just heard about people, somewhere out there. And yeah, our story started becoming a lot more real. And even around the point where, my husband, we went back and forth around, do I retire? Do I put in my notice? And at the end of the day, we like go over the numbers. And I was like, I think you just have to do it. Because I just don't think it's ever going to really be perfect. Like, look, we figured out how to do all of this up till now. We will figure out how to do it going forward under this new vice. So yeah, so communication, financial intimacy, and that's even independent with yourself of like, if you're not in a couple, just, having that conversation with yourself, talking about what are the most important things, aligning your spending to that, and then, kind of building out your systems of like how you're going to funnel the money into what and how you're going to get it to make it work for you. And after a period of time, this compound interest thing, and I mean, I love numbers, but I'm not like a number person, but compound interest was making us more than we were making a month. I mean, it was like, how is this possible? So, and it is. So it's, this landed us here. We're about 6 months in. No, 8, 9 months. We're still doing it. So as part of the Coast Fire, I work, my husband has a pension, and between the two of us, we cover all of our expenses. and we just don't save anymore for retirement. So that, like, that drop down, that gave us back that 20% of, like, obviously we weren't going to make as much as we would in full-time, employment, but we also didn't have to save for retirement. So we've got a little bit of a, I don't want to say discount, but yeah.
Yeah, when because my husband and I are very into fire movement, and we're very into the idea, but we were like, it's exciting to me. It's exciting to us, and I think that my scarcity mindset, a lot of times, like for my husband, when he had scarcity fears growing up, it was, okay, I need to get the thing while I can get the thing because there's going to be scarcity, right? And my scarcity thing was, I need to keep the thing while I have the thing. Otherwise, right, there's going to be scarcity later. So those two, it was kind of coming from the same place, but kind of brought itself forward in different ways. And when we got married, when we first started dating, my husband was making $40,000 and we were living in Massachusetts, which is hugely, like, very, very expensive place. California also very, very expensive place to live. And I wasn't working. Well, I worked at a coffee shop and I was a nanny, and then we moved here to Iowa, where it's much lower cost of living, and you can live off 40,000. And so we did our budget based on that. And then when I got a job, we didn't change our budget. We said, okay, we're not going to have a mortgage. We're not going to take out car loans, right? We're going to drive these crappy cars until they die, and then we're going to buy more crappy cars. We're going to live in this ugly house, right? We've been in here for 19 years now, because we had said, if we are going, even when I started working and I started making a salary too, we pretended that did not exist. We said, this is the budget we have. This is how much we spend on groceries. This is how much we spend on this. We kept our budget at 40,000 or less. And then when I started bringing home a paycheck, it just went straight into investment. And what that did for us was it allowed us in 2014, when Chrissa and I needed to, our jobs were not secure. And so in 2014, my husband was working that same job, and because we didn't have any debts, because we didn't have a mortgage, we had to worry about property taxes and home insurance, but that was it, really. And because of that, we were able to say, okay, we can make this leap, right? If I make zero, because my husband had gotten some raises from the 40,000 over that time too. And so I said, if I make zero, it doesn't affect our spending at all. And so then we started this company, and I made zero for a year and a half. And we said, but we can take the hit, right? Because we didn't have a mortgage or car payments to have to worry about with that income. And then my husband was on the road traveling. And when my daughter was born, again, like you said, it's all about options, right? So when my daughter was born, we said, okay, we have fewer ends, right? To make ends meet, you can make more money or you can have fewer ends. And we said, the more we can limit our expenses, the more we can not have payments or streamings or subscriptions or anything, shopping, the more opportunities that we have, the more freedom and flexibility that we have, to be able to, again, take that risk and have my husband come work in the company with me full time and not have that, that salary that we had lived on. And yeah, we've been together 19 years, and we're still living off that same salary, that $40,000, because I said, if I can do that, right, then I know, okay, Chrissa and I and you, Mariah, we're in a field that has meaning, whether or not it's tied to our income and whether or not it's tied to finances. And so owning and running and operating a counseling agency has benefit above making money off working at that company. And so for us at this point, knowing, okay, our expenses are, we spent $36,000 last year, right? Like our expenses are low. We know, okay, if the market turns, right? If things change in the counseling field, if Medicaid cuts happen like they're going to, right? If all of these things happen, and the business part of what we're doing day to day isn't making sense, that's okay, right? And that we have the ability to keep the thing going, even if it's not paying us, because we have less ends, to meet. And for me, that's really what FIRE excites me, right? About FIRE is that, like, I can keep this company going even if it costs money, right? Because those, expenses at the end of the day are low. So we kind of made a game out of it, and just really enjoy it. But absolutely, there's that, like, the sense sometimes of doing that game can be very stressful for somebody. Those things that were like fun to me, like, hey, Joe, I'm not going to spend money for an entire year. Or like, hey, I'm not going to eat in a restaurant for the next 2 years. Like, I'm going to grow my own food and just cook it at home and bring my food with me where I go places. Those are fun to me, but they were not fun to him. Right? So it really, and we were able to, like you said, like those monthly meetings, just being able to go, no, but what are we doing it for? Like, what is the goal? And as long as we had that kind of shared vision of like, no, I don't want to have to worry about this agency, right? And if this agency can pay my bills or not. I want to keep the thing going because it's valuable and useful in the greater scheme of things. And I think that's really where we were able to come together with that. So I'm so excited to talk about FIRE. Of course, I just think it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, that's a wonderful story. I mean, a lot of, very practical. I mean, it is a lot about a practicality. It's mindset for sure, but it is achievable. It is, yeah, tapping into creativity of like, how can we do this? Like, what will it look like? And yeah, taking this step back and looking around and being like, we don't need all of these things. I mean, I know we have the keeping up with the Joneses and the lifestyle creep. And I mean, we're the same with you. We just replaced with used cars, and it's good enough. I mean, my son keeps asking about when can we get a McLaren, or when can we get a new car, like a cool car and stuff. And he sees that a lot at school, and it's like, it's just not something that's important to us. But guess what? We're going to go on this wonderful trip. And, like, we try to incorporate as many things in for him into it as possible. So it's not, just always out about parents and stuff. But yeah, it's these things on a daily thing that we have to think about, like, that's just not as important to us as our bigger goal, as our shared vision, as how I want to truly be living my life. And I do see it, I have young adult nephews, and I think they struggle because of the overwhelming high cost of living. And I totally feel that for them, and it almost puts them in a paralyzed state, because it's like, every small job I have doesn't get me that much further in their mind. But it's like, no, it's the same steps that we all took. Like, we went to college, we shared rooms in college. Like, when I first moved out, like, I had to rent a room in someone's house. Like, it is just what you can do. It's building steps, but it feels so scary to get, to be young adult, possibly laden with loans, living in a high cost of living area where a house is like $500K plus. But it's like, okay, maybe we need to start looking at those beliefs and, and challenging them of what that looks like for you. Maybe homeownership isn't happening for you in your 20s, but it's still a possibility. Let's check out how you can do that. Give yourself a longer scope.
Well, and like you mentioned, I feel like hustle culture, and even with like social media, like I feel like that's such a big thing, is like with influencers, like showing all these things and how much money they have. Do you think that like has impacted, like you said, like your younger nephews, like seeing like, oh, I don't have that, or that's harder to obtain, because you're seeing it even more on social media with other people and with influencers, like showing off things that they have? Do you think that's affected people saving money and things like that?
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's such a small slice of people, and half of that, I mean, we find out it's not even true. It's pumped up in some way. I mean, on travels, we'll see influencers like, oh, well, influencers are here taking photos and stuff. It's like, it's all propped up for some gain. And I mean, I will give it to them because I don't know. I just, from a mental health lens, I find social media very challenging because it really drags people down and feeds them with things that, if you don't have good coping mechanisms to unhook from some of the things that are being fed, it'll make you feel terrible. It'll make you not move forward. It'll make you feel like this will never be me. Or I can't move forward because, Mr. Beast is, he's giving away millions of dollars and stuff. But his story is really amazing because he doesn't come from a lot. But like, look at the method that he used to get there. Whereas people, and especially young adults and kids, are only being fed the outcomes, like of when they really, really hit it big. And it's like, well, you're missing the journey. It's not the destination, it's a journey. I mean, I guess it is a bit of the destination, but like being in that present moment and living, and making your own way with it, and not being so bogged down of like, this will never work. It kind of brings up of like who you put in your life, right? Who you bring around in your life as well, as like, who is helping you move to your next thing, or are they keeping you in the same place? And it's like, you want more people that will help you move to your next space, that will nudge you, push you, and support you to get to the next phase.
Absolutely. I mean, having support like that, right? Seeing people, anytime that I hear that somebody is doing fire, right? I'm always like, tell me everything that you're doing, because that's how we learn, but that's also how we get hope. That's how we see that, hey, this person was able to do this. And saving 10% or 25% or 50% of income, when I was babysitting in Massachusetts, like I was saving that portion, because what you'll do with $10 is what you'll do with $1,000. And so the habit of that and being able to see those small gains can really combat that hopelessness that I think a lot of times is felt. My daughter's 9, and she says sometimes, and I remember being her age and having this fear and thinking it. And so sometimes she'll say, what if I can't get a job, right? What do I do? What if I can't get a house? And she's 9. And I always say to her, babe, I remember being your age, and I remember thinking the exact same things, right? Like who's going to hire me and for what? And I think that when we can see other people, when she can see other people and hear other people's stories and go like, yeah, what were you doing when you were 14, when you were 16, right? That built those habits and built those skills. It kind of gives her that next level up, and that idea that, no, I can do this. These small things do make a difference. I told her this year, about a month or so ago, I said, okay, you're 9.5, and you can start driving a car to school when you're 14. So you have 5 years to save up for a car. And she went, what? You're not going to buy me a car? I said, no, I'm not going to buy you a car. And I said, but you've got what you have right now is worth more than somebody buying you a car, because what you have right now is time, and time to build that skill. And so now anytime she gets birthday money, or she earns $10 or $5, she's putting a third of that into her little car fund thing, and then we're bringing it to the bank, right? And she's building that skill. And so that is going to be worth much more, because right now taking $3 out of 9 and putting it into, you know, your little bucket and bringing that to the bank, now when we're talking about a salary when you're older, or when you're making $20 an hour, right, you're still going to have that skill and be doing that. And when she can see, like, oh, I just brought this much to the bank, right, and then we're matching it. And so going, yeah, when I do that, it builds up. It brings that hope, I think, that we're talking about, and that you're talking about, being able to measure progress and then see progress. So when you talk about, you know, having those net worth meetings with your partner and being able to say, yeah, we are making progress, it is working, just brings that hope. And I think if we're afraid to measure it, or we're afraid to look at it, we miss out on that progress.
Well, first question. You can get a car at 14 and drive in Iowa?
Well, technically, you still need, like, you can get a school permit if you live far enough away, or you have to drive with a parent until you're 16.
Wow.
But that does seem young.
I'm having like a reaction thinking about my 10-year-old. It'd be like, this is like right around the corner. I mean, definitely not 14, but I might have to take a different strategy. But wow, that's impressive. But I like that she's, you know, saying it is a measurable thing, you know, of, you know, I've started our son essentially on the same thing as well. It's like, you know, there's a monthly allowance, and there's opportunities to make money, in gifts, and it's all, you know, spread around between saving and investing. Like, we started him on like his own index fund, to just see, like, you didn't do anything, and look where it's at now. Like, this is how, you know, this is the way that we're doing it. This is what we're passing down to you. And I mean, he makes appropriate, I think, developmentally appropriate, like, candy and video game stuff, but it's showing him that he's not really getting anywhere fast. And it's like, that's a great understanding too. It's like, you know, here's, you're making the choices about how to spend this money. This seems to be important to you, but just means for delaying some of the bigger purchases. So yeah, I mean, this is, I think, the best skill, especially for kids that are just, you know, I think a lot of parents will want to protect them from this. And, you know, like, depending on what your story is making sure that they had more than you had growing up. That's fairly typical, to not have to worry about stress taking care of things. But are we missing out on the actual practical skills of what it's like to manage money in these times where they do have your support? Because, you know, once they're out there and they've got credit cards, and, you know, it just seems like money takes care of itself, because, you know, we're just tapping, you know, like, basically our phones on everything, or credit. It's very little exchange of actual money. So yeah, I mean, parents do have more of a responsibility in helping to reduce anxiety over time, of, like, yes, putting in the time, putting in good practices, saving, investing. Everyone, you know, they're all going to be millionaires essentially, and that's an exciting thing. But you want to start fostering that from a younger age than we were exposed to, because it's so much more different from the generation previously, that you do need more time to grow your money.
Well, and as a parent, not getting into money struggles or power challenges, not having to say no. You know, if we're in a toy store, or we're in a candy store or a gas station, I never have to say, no, you can't buy that. Because every time I can say, yeah, you can buy that. If you have enough money, you can buy that. And being able to have that reality of that separated from, mom says I can or mom says I can't, means that she has to make her own choices about those things. And so like, yeah, absolutely. But how much is it? And it took like 2 years for her to look at the price tags before asking for things, right? And because I'd say, how much is it? Well, I don't know. Okay, let's look at how much it is, right? How much do you have? Well, I don't know. Okay, let's do that. And so as a parent, then I never have to say no. And it becomes kind of a power struggle when we have in relationships, in parent-child dynamics, when one person has to say no and kind of be that boundary keeper all the time, then it lessens the other person's ability to build boundaries for themselves and build decision-making processes for themselves around the values that they personally have. And so having somebody say, yeah, you can. You absolutely can. If you have the money, you can buy that. Is I think a benefit and can kind of stop some of those challenges that we grow up into, right? That I go, yeah, I remember being told no about things, right? And how I responded to that or how I might have reacted to that once I did have money. Well, I'm going to buy it now because now I have money. I'm going to do that. So I always think those discussions are so helpful, and I'm just so glad you're doing these conversations with families that you're working with and with couples that you're working with, and with individuals, because money is so taboo and it doesn't get talked about enough, but it impacts every single thing that we do. So I just think it's so important.
Agree. That's why I love it.
Love it. Well, Mariah, you can be found at myfinanciallyflexiblelife.com, and then also on Facebook and on Instagram at Financially Flexible Life. And again, it just goes back to that flexibility, those options that you were talking about, right? When we've got our money in a place or our finances in a place where it's serving us, and we're not serving it or that system, now we've got that flexibility. We've got that freedom to make choices based on our values instead of based on numbers on a spreadsheet or on a price tag. And I think that is wonderful.
I'm Mariah Hudler, and I need a counselor.
And I'm Chrissa Hunt.
And I'm Julie Johnson, and we need a counselor.
So do you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the You Need a Counselor podcast. We are so grateful that you're here. You can also find and connect with You Need a Counselor on Facebook and Instagram. If you've enjoyed today's show, please take a moment to like, review, or leave a comment, as all of these things help others to find and benefit from the podcast as well. If you're in the state of Iowa and interested in mental health counseling or behavioral health intervention services, give us a call at 800-531-4236.